Now then, I did a video short about this jaw crusher, I don't know, a week or two ago, something like that. And it's been particularly nasty weather and not right for filming with strong winds and what have you. Anyway, I thought we'd have a catch up just to see what's happened. So what I started off with is that piece of channel there. Yep, this piece here, just upright-ish. And these pieces here are bits of, they came out of a potato elevator, so they're hardened steel. So they're bits of rod welded on there just to create like teeth effect. Yep. So that was that. And then this is a piece of box section. And I thought, do you know what? That's the piece I had, yeah. And I thought that'll be quite strong, but this front face is going to get crushed in. So I drilled some holes through and put some 1/2-inch rod and welded it front and back, just to create a lot more strength. So then we've got the bearings and that cam. Okay, and the cam, you just about saw that. The cam is a piece of scaffolding tube, a load of holes drilled along here, clamped onto this piece of inch shaft, and it's welded through quite a lot. And then, I don't know whether you can see this. Oh yeah, you can. There's a piece of square steel that was belted in there and then welded in place. So when the full force is on this cam, it's not just pushing on the tube, it's the tube and the piece of steel back to the shaft. So that's that. And we've got a separate video about these bearings. So that was that. So what happened was, and let's just move the zoom out and then move round a little bit. There we go. So these two bottom pieces here, this was one piece, and I cut it in half, clamped it together and drilled a hole through there, through both of them, so the hole's in the same place. Fair enough. And then I did the same thing with this and this piece of lump of angle iron, and it's about 3/8 thick. So I drilled the holes here the same, clamped together, yeah, they're the same length, and for the bearings, and that was a guess where I wanted those to go. And then later on I've cut these notches out. Yeah, so welded it all together and then dug around in my bit of scrap plate steel and came across a piece that was, ooh, where are we, let's get there. It was that shape, and I cut that in half to create these pieces here, which not only fills in that hole but adds strength. So as you can see, I was just using whatever I had to create this general structure. Yeah, so there was, I suppose it might have been interesting, but the weather was wrong and all those sorts of things. But it literally was trying to work out how to put this together with the things that I'd already got. I wasn't hunting for stuff, I was just making it up as you went along. So now we have the basis. Yeah, and you've got an idea. Yeah. So let's just move the camera and show you what else I've come across. So Stuart gave me a very old potter's wheel, but it was a bit strange. It was a stand-up potter's wheel, treadle, and most of the bearings were absolutely shot. And I tried to use it, and it would be fine for something when you're throwing something maybe 2 inches in diameter, but beyond that you just couldn't put the power into it. So this is the flywheel off it. So we've got a flywheel now. It was the same size of the shaft. What's not to like about that? One of the problems is that the shaft is not quite long enough, and of course I've now welded the cam on there, so unless I want to start all over again, then hang on a minute, let's move the camera. Then that bearing there is going to have to move sideways somewhat. Because the bearings are not tightened up on the shaft yet, so I want this block to move 1/2 inch that way, just so that it doesn't interfere with that, but it gives a bit more shaft sticking out that side. Okay, and I'm going to do the same this other side here. So I think what I'll do is, rather than just go sideways, I'll go sideways and up slightly, so the holes are further apart. That's in the hole here and the new hole, but it doesn't want to be far. And then I looked in my collection of pulleys and taper locks and came up with that. So there's a bit of fiddling to do there. It's probably an hour or two. We've got to get the bearings moved, so got to re-drill holes, make sure it's level, then lock the bearings onto the shaft, and then the flywheel can get locked on, and that pulley, which is a Fenner taper lock, so let's just move round. There we go. So that'll lock on there with a keyway, etc. And then I went and dug in one of the outside sheds in the gearbox area, and I came across this gearbox. Now the crows are enjoying themselves, aren't they? Okay, so let's have a look at this gearbox. So there we go. Yep. As you can see, that was a motor. Yeah. Okay. We've got a taper lock and a pulley that will fit on there. This bearing fits on there where a bearing was before. Yeah. Let us just see what the ratio is. The keyway is nearly upright. That's 1, 2, 3, 3 and 3/4 to 1. Okay. Well, that's a useful. So if we mount this up, we've got a pulley that goes on there, we've got that goes on there, we've got a taper lock that goes on there, so we want a bigger pulley on there, and then we want to mount it so that that shaft, or the pulley on that shaft, is in line with the main shaft pulley, which is there. So we're moving on. So I'm thinking that the ratio between that and that pulley is probably 2.5 to 1. So we've got 2.5 to 1 and 3 3/4 to 1. The motor that I've got is probably a 1400 rev motor, yeah, and I'm thinking we probably want about 120 revs on that shaft. So we're working there. I've got some more big pulleys, so we'll want a small pulley on the motor and a big pulley on that shaft there, and we'll get somewhere in the region of 120 revs, hopefully. There's a lot of fiddling around to do, but I'm using stuff that I've got. So far the only consumables I've used is a couple of cutting discs and some 2.5 welding rods, and that's about the limit of it. Okay, we're going to leave it there, and when I get round to messing with this gearbox, I mean, I could take just on that flange there, that will undo and this will come off, and I could take the shaft out and remove this with the angle grinder and then tidy all this lot up, but I actually don't think it needs it. We've got the room, and it may be that everything lines up a lot easier. Yeah, I want to put the motor at the back there because it gives more room away from that flywheel. If you had everything here, it might look very neat, but the flywheel might become a problem. But that flywheel, I'm guessing it weighs, I don't know, 20 kilos, something like that. So it's a good old thing to keep the momentum going, because, you know, everything comes back, the cam comes back and it's rolling on, and then a brick drops lower in the crusher. You want that extra oomph just to keep it running. I'm hoping this is not going to tear itself apart or the motor stalls. I think the motor I've got is a 1.5 horsepower, which is not huge, but when you have something like an overall reduction of 11 or 12 to 1, yeah, you've got a lot more torque, and I think torque is the answer here. So anyway, so there's a bit of an update. Hopefully you're finding it interesting, and you know, just goes to show, I could show you making this, but you won't be able to make something exactly the same, but it shows you the basic principles of how to make it up as you go along. Right, I put that support bearing in place. Yeah, I had to shim that bearing onto the shaft, but I don't think that's a problem as long as the bearing does actually spin nicely. And I've tightened it up as much as I can and adjusted everything so it spins quite smoothly. I think that will do. Right, so I've cut those bits of angle iron off short so that we can get a biggish pulley on that end, and on this end can we see that all right? I'm not sure, but the keyway was wider than the keyway there, so I've had to cut a notch out the side of the big keyway to accommodate the narrower keyway. It's just with a 1mm disc. Hopefully you can see that. There you go, you see this bit has been ground off. Yeah. Anyway, now we're going to have to try and line it up. Now I'm figuring that this whole thing going to be quite heavy, so it's going to have to be on some wheels. Yeah, so maybe we'll have wheels, and then, well, you'll see, the motor and gearbox sticks out one side, and that can be part of a drawbar, so I can move it around with the mini tractor. So, a little bit of lube, bit of grease on all this lot, so that if I want to take it apart in a number of years' time, it will actually come apart. Not a lot of grease, but just a little bit, and especially in those threads there. Okay, so where are we? That's good threads, so that goes there. And the breeze is getting up. Okay, then we'll just line that up about there and tighten her up. I do like these Fenner taper locks. But you've got to have a good selection of pulleys, and of course that comes with visits to the scrapyard and taking your time to pick the pulleys up and take them off motors and all those sorts of things. And of course you need a friendly scrapyard as well. I've picked these up over the last, I don't know, 30 years. Got a big pile of them. That enables you to just make the selections. It's like when we were doing that water wheel at Baldock's Mill. I had a big pile of these pulleys in the back of the car, so that as we were experimenting we can change things. Right, let's change the camera and we'll put things in place. Okay, the wind is from behind me, behind the camera, so hopefully we won't get in there, in the microphone. So we got the big pulley down to a small pulley through the gearbox. Okay, so I've put the gearbox on a couple of bits of 2-inch box section, and that's about in line there. So we need to put the motor in place and then work out, and I'm thinking that if we have a piece of 2-inch box section underneath this, underneath the base there, and coming through here, this can pick up on that, and then a bit of 2-inch box section coming down here and through here, and it can carry on and make a drawbar, yeah, maybe with a windy handle, a jockey wheels type thing, and then the motor can sit here on a bit of a frame between this bit of box section and that bit of box section. So we want a big pulley on there. Now I have one somewhere, here we are. With another Fenner taper lock on it, and that will go on there, like that. Yeah, yeah, and then the motor goes here. That might work. Got to make a solid frame, got to be able to move it around. Yeah, so yeah, quite like that. That won't go on much further, although I could cut a bit of this angle iron frame a bit more if we needed to, but it's on the end of the shaft. I left that long just so that you never know what you need. So yeah, this could have been slightly longer, but we're not, because there's those bolts there. The box section has to be down the middle of the gearbox, which lines up with this plate here. So there will be a hole for all the broken brick to fall out the bottom, and then it'll be on wheels, so that'll raise it up. So I need to go and look in the store for bits of box section, either 2 or 3 inch box section, and we need a couple of bits, probably about 5 foot long. Right, we've got a plan. Right, it's just the input cable that's bad. It's an old rubber cable. Let's get these nuts off. Okay, no label on the back, but you just got, it's quite simple. What have we got? We've got earth, A1, and probably AZ by the looks of it. But we should have a black, a red and a green. I think that is green. I think that's red. But the green will go to earth anyway. So I'm going to have to trim this back because this was the bane of my life. Rubber cable like this. But the black, well, that's easy enough. But the red and the green, they probably stand out very well to you, but not to me. So we'll just work our way through that, put a fresh mains cable on it. Right, motor's clamped in place, it's rewired, gearbox is in place, all the belts are on. This is a first time test. Contact. Oh wow, I'd say that was a bit slow. What happens if you throw a brick in? I think it will be too slow. Yes, it's too slow. Okay, so we'll need to go, I think, twice the speed. Okay, but it works, sort of. So I think we need to change this big pulley here for something half the size. But effectively, the cam's working, the bearings are working, the gearbox is working, there's no horrible noises. Brilliant, eh? Right, let's change that pulley then if I can. So I've changed that pulley, but I'm figuring this is still too slow. Yeah, so we need to either change the big pulley on the end there or change that one. And I've got one there, so let's change that. Wind's in the camera. Right, that pulley is changed. We've gone from quite a big one to a medium-sized one to a small one, and let's see what happens. Contact. Well, I still think it's not going fast enough. Yeah. No, it's not going fast enough, so we're going to have to do something else. So that pulley on the end there will have to change. Okay, so I decided to change that pulley there because I wanted a big pulley on there, on that end, so it's got lots of grip, because it's going slow, and the slower the pulley the bigger it needs to be, or else you don't get that momentum effect. So we've got big to small rather than small to big. So let's plug it in and see what happens. The other thing I think is we need some return springs on the moving jaw. Yeah, so let's give it a go. We've got a blown fuse. Let me just sort that out. Right, let's try again. I have been welding on this extension lead, so I'm assuming that that fuse is just so that's it. I've had enough. Ah, interesting. So the gearing's a bit too tall and it blows the fuse. Right. Yeah. Okay, let me think about this for a minute. Okay, we've adjusted things again. Put a smaller pulley on that end. Yep. And because the belt was also slipping on the far end of the gearbox, then I put a bigger pulley on that end there to change that ratio. Really, I think we need a double groove pulley on that one there and 2 belts, but we're getting there. I also feel that perhaps this 2 horsepower motor is not powerful enough, because I'm just getting the feeling that that jaw needs to move a bit faster to give it more vibration. So it may be that all this lot here, it'll be redundant, and somewhere I've got a 90-degree gearbox that has got the splines for a tractor PTO on one end, so we might be able to run it off the little Kubota. But let's just see what happens to this lot. It should start up now with a bit of luck. Okay, proof of concept. Yeah, and I think that jaw's not moving fast enough. So let's carry on. But I did notice that down the bottom of that of the here, things are jamming up. So it's all working, but it's jamming up down the bottom there. So I'm going to take the moving jaw out and cut a piece off the bottom just to release stuff. Yeah, so just cut the bottom of this off down there just with the angle grinder. So I'll just remove the pin, the pivot pin, which is, let me show you, just down there is the pivot pin. So just take a clip out, pull the pin out, and that whole moving jaw will lift out, and then I can cut a chunk off the bottom inner face. So here's the moving jaw, and I had cut some of these teeth off, but that made a slight difference, but not a lot. So I'm going to cut the whole of that front face off up to where I removed the teeth, and I'll just do with that with the angle grinder. So there we go. I might have cut too much off, but there's only one way to find out. So let's put it back together. It's a bit fiddly getting the pin through. There we go. Put the clip on. Let's get some bricks and give it a go. So despite cutting a piece off there, we're still jamming up, and it seems to be jamming up on the pin that goes through. So I think what we need to do is take this jaw out again and put a piece of plate or something from where I've cut it off down to just in front of that pin, so to guide the crushed material down there, rather than, so it wouldn't have anything to bridge over on. Yeah, anyway, so that's more stuff to do, and it's a work in progress. But I think as far as this video is concerned, we'll stop here, and I shall get back to you when I've done further developments. Things generally, life and whatnot, is getting a bit busy. As I said, this is as far I've got at the moment. When I get a moment, I shall take the pin out and remove the moving jaw and weld another piece on, but at a different angle, just to guide everything down. Yeah, and then of course this whole thing needs to be lifted up. I've got an axle with some wheels. It just wants a piece out the middle, removing, welding back together, lift all this lot up, get the big tractor out, lift it out, put the axle underneath, tack it in place, make it up as you go along, see what you've got. Anyway, I would really, before I go any further, I would really like comments from you all. Yeah, and I have noticed that something weird is happening with the YouTube algorithms. I don't think they're a stationary thing, and so therefore views seem to be going down. If that's the case, well, I would ask you to do all the business, you know, the business that helps to improve the profile of these videos, and we'll see what happens. Anyway, I think it's all about sharing information, passing information on, helping people be more self-reliant and to be able to fix stuff. When I want to know about how to fix something and I'm not sure, first place I go is YouTube, and after about 6 videos you'll find something mostly that will tell you, or it'll point the direction. Let's hear what you have to say, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers for now.